Hey guys, Sunny here. The Shadow Isles, or as Riot likes to call it after the events of 2021, the Viego Isles. There was a lot of hate for the way the events were executed, like Sentinels of Light completely changing the personalities of some of the champions, the Ruined King game being full of bugs, and Gwen. Just Gwen.
Snip, snip.
But despite all that, I love these big events that span across multiple games. League with all the new champions and game modes. TFT had their entire Reckoning set. Valorant got some guns or something. I don't know, I don't play the game. And Legends of Runeterra received 2 new champions. Akshan was added to Shurima and instantly had a massive impact on the meta. I love what they did to him, and I think he's also one of the best designed cards in all of Runeterra. The second champion, Viego, had a slower start and took some time to find a home, but after the Kindred buffs, he's sitting comfortably in a meta deck. The biggest thing that Viego has going for him is that he's a controlled champion for a controlled region. It's strange when you think about it. The best champion card in Shadow Isles before the Viego release was Ledros. An argument could be made for Thresh and Kindred, but Thresh doesn't really win games by himself. He gets a stacked Nasus to do the work for him, and Kindred was straight up bad before her buff. I'm honestly not a fan of the green region, but I love Viego's play pattern. Summoning mist armies to stack up their power and the power of your champion. It gives a sense of inevitability because you know the entire deck is growing more powerful every time a mist appears. Before Viego can summon a mist though, one of your allies needs to die. It would be unfair if you could just summon a free blocker every turn with almost no investment, right? Yeah, so that free blocker also only lasts for 1 turn because of this genius little keyword in Runeterra called... Okay, that's a board with really big units, but all I need to do is survive the next open attack and I can win the turn after. I have a board full of blockers, so I should be fine, right? For those of you who are unaware, when a unit is ephemeral, it means they die when the round ends or after they strike another unit. So I'm a huge fan of these type of negative keywords, because it means you can do something powerful by giving that card a downside. A 5/5 lifesteal unit for 3 mana? That's fine because it dies this turn anyway. Opponents can just choose not to attack into ephemeral units to deny the value. And that's where cards that aren't typically found in Shadow Isles become really interesting. Force a strike with single combat, transfer the keyword to an enemy unit with Deathmark, summon an 11/17 that wins the game after a single attack. We often don't realize how powerful a card really is because they are balanced by the fact that the ephemeral aspect makes it all temporary. Let's zoom in on that a little bit. Here's me cosplaying as Grappler. Got my beanie, got a mountain of papayas behind me. I'm totally pulling off his look. Now, let's turn me into a card. The Sunny Papaya. 3 attack, 2 health, 3 mana, and quick attack as a keyword. That's pretty bad, huh? Nobody wants to pay 3 mana for an understated minion. Quick attack is at least good on offense, but this card is dead on defense. But to make up for that complete lack of defensive options, let's give this card a very powerful effect that only happens during attack. Attack, summon an attacking living papaya with my stats. Level up, I've seen myself or my papayas strike the enemy nexus twice. You really want to block the papayas to prevent the level up from happening, but it feels real bad blocking a quick attack unit or an ephemeral unit. This is when the ephemeral keyword makes sense. A powerful upside paired with clear downsides for that temporary spike in tempo. Oh yeah, this card is actually Zed, in case you were too mesmerized by me holding all these papayas. Another example is Azir, commanding his Sand Soldier army. Only when you start an attack, you get some additional ephemeral units to put in some extra damage. Oh Azir, what have they done to you? I don't think I really appreciated Azir enough during his glory days when he found play in multiple different decks. Ever since his nerf to his level up requirement, he hasn't been quite the same. And again, the Ascendants have to suffer for the crimes of Blade Dance. Let's talk about that Blade Dance deck, because it actually did one thing right. It made an all-out ephemeral deck actually makes sense. Sand Soldiers and Blades 2 are basically ephemeral units, are cards that you constantly put into battle to get payoff for your other units. Azir grows bigger for every unit you summon. Aurelia gets to swap places to do some shenanigans. Sparring Student can... well... we've seen what this card can do. It's all payoff for playing a ton of units. You wouldn't even have enough board space for all of those cards if you doubled your board, so they are ephemeral and only exist in combat. You know we all love the Blade Dance play pattern, and it's weird to finally have a deck that does the ephemeral thing right. And it wasn't even done by Shadow Isles. Leave it to Riot to give an archetype to Ionia to make it work, instead of the region where it would actually make sense. The spooky region is stuck with trash cards like Iron Harbinger and Soul Shepherd. Even the goodest of boys isn't actually all that great. Shark Chariot is super fun fun though, and honestly the entire reason to play Ephemeral Decks, but it's time we remove the can't block. I mean, come on, we've been playing Runeterra for more than 2 years now. With the amount of powerful cards that got added to the game, I'm sure a Shark deck wouldn't break the game. The only deck this cutie saw play in was Grand Plaza with Hecarim and Lucian, which was the only other playable Ephemeral deck besides Blade Dance, but it didn't really come anywhere close to a tier 0 deck like Azirelia did. With Blade Dance, you play a deck with ephemerals that directly put your ephemerals into combat while still having board presence with the played unit. When you're playing actual ephemeral units, you're trading your board presence for tempo. You get a powerful attack, but you lose the units the same round. And that is the takeaway from this entire point I'm trying to make. Aurelia decks were so insanely, painfully, disgustingly, and mind-blowingly broken. Not just because it was an Ionia deck with premium protection tools, but because you don't lose the units you play like this one. You can even use that unit you play to summon even more soldiers from Azir with a regular attack. Okay, but enough about Blade Dance. I think I've made my point clear. One final thing I'll say is that they fixed one major problem with all-out ephemeral decks. Open attacking. When you're playing with units that only last a single turn, it's not actually possible to set up a powerful turn beforehand. You'll go into the next turn waiting for cards that will never show up that way. It's like expecting your jungler to gank. It's just not going to happen. Getting your ephemeral attack usually means playing a card like Haunted Relic or Onslaught of Shadows in the early game. Completely unplayable cards, and I think they should be rebalanced and become focus speed, so you can use them to open attack and summon your Shark Boys. Because honestly, what's a worse feeling than getting your only ephemeral unit hit by an Arachnoid Sentry? So I'm pretty okay at playing Legends of Runeterra. I'm never the greatest or more consistent player, but I have a pretty good feel for what kind of plays work and what kind of cards are good in what situations. Wait. Papaya's armor? Wait, did I just surrender when I won? Did I just surrender when I won? Over the years, I've gotten better at putting that feel into actual words, and it made me realize why playing an ephemeral deck with powder monkeys felt so good. Monkey Idol and Monkey Business summon an ephemeral unit for you at round start that lets you open attack with them instantly to actually get value with your sharks. Monkeys also patch up another huge issue of ephemeral decks: defense. Summoning fleeting units on defense is awful because your opponent can just not attack into them. That way you lost your mana and a card in your hand. Monkeys from these cards just get summoned at round start, which feels really good because of the lower investment. Don't get me wrong, it's still bad, but the effect they provide is very good for the playstyle. Monkey. Yeah, I can try to make it sound good, but it just doesn't. Going all out on ephemeral is just bad because there are so many downsides. For some reason, a card got printed that really lets you double down on these downsides by making your entire deck ephemeral. Encroaching Shadows is a card that gives all cards in your hand and deck ephemeral and +2/+2. All you can do when this card is active is attempt to kill your opponent in a single turn, because you completely lose the ability to play the game on defending turns. It's a build-around card, but it just makes a bad archetype worse. Legends of Runeterra has 2 champions that want to be played in the ephemeral archetype. Both of them are animals. This one is a horse, and this one is a frog. Let's talk about the frog first. Kalista is a champion with an eventful past. Nerfed and changed multiple times in League of Legends, indirectly nerfed and changed multiple times in Legends of Runeterra. The Spear of Vengeance is now a forgotten champion in both games. Kalista does like half the damage she one day did, but are her abilities actually translated well from the Riot MOBA to the Riot card game? Her Q throws a spear, that's her champion spell, Black Spear. Her W sends out a sentry that roams the map, and that's Haunted Relic, I guess? The little ghost kind of looks the same. And her E is her signature ability, Rend, where she pulls out all the spears she's been putting into somebody all at once for massive damage. But I don't see that coming back in a card. And lastly, another reason why Kalista was a problematic champion design: Fate's Call. Pull an ally to safety and reposition them. Honestly, it's a shame the ally gets to choose where they go, because after using this ability on a Gwen, I'd like to choose to throw her off the bridge. Legends of Runeterra is really good at letting you fulfill a fantasy that a certain deck is trying to accomplish. Can you control the darkness with Senna and grow the darkness spell more powerful with Veigar, like he does with his ability power stacking in League of Legends? Do you want to slowly toss cards out of your deck to go deeper and deeper into your deck, so you can rise your sea monsters closer and closer to the surface until they become an unstoppable force of nature? Or do you want to control a dragon army, like almost every video game tries to do at one point or another? But wait, that's where Runeterra will do you one better. The dragon deck in this virtual card game lets you control huge dragons and enormous celestial beings. Just having dragons isn't enough. With this deck, you bring down the heavens to completely shatter your opponent with pure undefiled value. God, I love greeting card games. Kalista plays well with ephemeral or self-sacrifice decks because your units are constantly dying, progressing her level up. So what fantasy does Kalista bring you when you put her in a deck? We have a lot of spooky stuff as expected from Shadow Owls, like spiders with Elise, the Eternal Hunter deck with the main mechanic being Slay for Kindred and Asses. There's trees. And the actual fearsome champion, Nocturne, who can't even see play in a fearsome deck because he's tied to the Moon Tribe with Nightfall. Honestly, it's kind of hard to do a true horror deck in a card game. Unless, of course, you count this as horror. But I think Kalista is a champion that tried to do it for our card game. It's difficult to make your opponent feel any fear when you see a card like this. She is a 4/3 fearsome with absolutely no text. For many months even, Kalista was worse than Merciless Hunter, a common follower from Shurima. Her level up basically being bringing gift for Renekton.
Right, Arda?
Kalista's not really a bad card though, don't get me wrong. I think she's actually one of the better designed champions in the game. She resurrects the strongest dead allied follower, which can create interesting different scenarios without introducing RNG. It will always be the strongest allied follower that died this game, and who that strongest allied follower currently is can vary from match to match. One reason I absolutely love Zoe Victor as a deck is because every single game you play will have different scenarios in games. Victor will never roll the same keywords, and you will never generate the same celestial cards. Every game is going to play out different. Wait, okay, maybe games right now aren't so different because it's just 50 shades of getting beaten up by Gnar, but for somebody who plays Legends of Runeterra a lot, this is a great feature for a deck to have.
Anyway, this is our presentation.
Leveling Kalista and reviving a follower also means that in the decks where you put Kalista in the spotlight, she gets to shine earlier because she's played before the high value follower you want to resurrect, like her boyfriend, Ledros. I've actually been reading up on some of the lore and I always thought Ledros was a bad guy. But basically Hecarim and his knights drove spears into Kalista's back, so when she was reborn as a wraith because of the Ruination, all she remembered was her hate towards Hecarim, and Ledros is trying to free her soul from being a spirit of vengeance. So Kalista roams all over Runeterra to appear before those who made pacts in her name, absorbing their souls to kill the ones that betrayed them. It's almost like the lore for this game is better than the game that started it all.
Such is the price of betrayal.
Can we get some updates on the MMO already, Riot? This lore is likely what the pre-reworked Kalista effect came from. Kalista bonds with an ally, the Pact, and grants it +2 attack. And then her level up revives the bonded ally on attack. Even though this is more thematic, I'm glad she's worded in a different way, because just reviving the strongest follower to get more value the longer the game goes is a much more interesting direction. If you play Kalista on turn 3, you're going to bond with a chump. But with current Kalista, you can revive a badass like Citria. No, wait, not that one. Yeah, that one. So with Kalista's vanilla effect and stat line, she's one of the most flexible champions in the game. She fits into basically any Shadow Owl deck that isn't hardcore control, because her resummon effect can do so many powerful things. But with that being said, why isn't she seeing play while being such a flexible card? She's honestly pretty comparable to a card like Zoe, Draven or Akshan, where they can be played and just provide value first by having good stats and potentially leveling later for even more value. And again, you don't need to look any further than the region she's in. Shadow Owls' best protection tool is Mark of the Isles, and that card grants ephemeral on top of the +2/+2. Yeah, nice combat trick if my unit is going to die for it anyway. A mid-range unit that can't be protected is a sad mid-range unit. Anyway, Kalista, while weak, is ephemeral support done right. You can level her by playing ephemerals or by sacrificing your own units. But it's up to you. When she revives the strongest follower, that follower is ephemeral, but it also takes all damage for Kalista while it's on the field. This is fantastic design because the unit was going to die this turn anyway. I'm convinced Kalista's time will come again when the right cards to support her get printed. She was once a part of the strongest deck in the game when They Who Endure was a playable card. But nerfs and the introduction of Targon made it impossible to put that card in your deck. The 1-mana counter card is just too powerful. And you can ask Swain if you had any doubts about that.
This is the most obnoxious thing I've ever experienced in my life.
So that's the Frog. An asset for an ephemeral or self-sacrifice deck, but not the centerpiece. The game finisher and the champion that can't escape the all-out ephemeral deck is... I almost can't believe these comments are real. 2 years ago, Mono Shadow Owls was the most broken deck in the game. It was at Blade Dance levels of oppression. Most of you probably won't even remember how strong it really was, or you joined the game when most of the cards in the deck received nerfs already. This deck was able to do everything. Aggro, mid-range, and control. You could get overwhelmed early with fearsomes or in the mid-game with ever-growing miss rates, and if you survived that, you had to deal with Hecarim's onslaught and late-game powerhouses like Raza and Ledros. The notable thing about this deck is that it played no ephemerals. Hecarim was just used as a value champion, and well, times changed and now Hecarim and Raza disappeared from the game entirely. The nerfs were specifically to make Hecarim less evergreen and more tied to an archetype. Going from a flexible, powerful champion to being forced into a dead, unplayable archetype is one hell of a punishment. Hecarim literally got sent to the Shadow Realm. As dead as the deck might be, when Hecarim comes down, he wants to close out the game. Shadow Owls in general don't really have as many ways to win games as you might think. No overwhelm, no elusives, and hey, that one in particular makes me like them a whole lot more, but there is one exception. Hecarim has overwhelm. It makes sense, you know? He's a fast horse that runs at you at max speed. That brings me back to when one of my best friends got into League of Legends, I tried to help him understand the game by playing against AI. This obviously got boring for me pretty fast, so I started just doing wacky builds. My favorite was always building full movement speed items on Hecarim and zooming around the map. So every time I think Hecarim, I think running around at lightning speed. Movement speed though obviously isn't a thing in card games, so when Hecarim starts an attack, you instead get this really satisfying effect where his two raids ride onto the field. It looks nice, it makes me feel powerful, and it even synergizes with ephemerals. Just like with the Sunny Papaya. I mean Zed. Stuff gets summoned on attack. Overwhelm on 5 attack isn't really going to straight up win you games, and that's why a card like Atrocity exists as win condition for SI. I used to absolutely hate this card for blowing out some games, but as I got better and more understanding of Runeterra, I warmed up to it a little bit. Champions like Viego and Kindred can grow pretty big in stats, but without a keyword to threaten damage, it's almost irrelevant. That's where Atrocity comes in. Good design on one hand because it gives a region like the Shadow Owls a win condition, and absolute trash design on the other hand because by killing your own champion, you can't even hear their victory quote at the end of the game. Just complete lame silence, so you won, but at what cost? Atrocity isn't playable as a card with Hecarim because his attack doesn't grow quite as high, but he gets another expensive card to close out games in an all-in play with Harrowing. You win the game on the same turn you play it, or you lose because your board only exists for one turn. That's where Hecarim's level up comes in play. Level 2 Hecarim gives you a very powerful effect that boosts the attack of all your Ghost Riders. Seeing stat go up make my brain do the happy chemical. And on top of that, you get these cool looking blue flames on your units. My favorite thing about that is that they remind me of these enemies from Paper Mario 2, which is one of my favorite games of all time. After finishing this video, I think it's about time to start my 6th playthrough. Or, well, maybe not, seeing as how Elden Ring released only a few days ago. Anyway, hear me out and tell me if you feel the same way. Runeterra is really good at giving you cool and exciting moments. Hecarim level up is definitely one of the bigger ones because of those blue flames, the animation for the riders, and the increased attack stats. But just think about leveling Zoe and playing another unit with a keyword. That sound and the sparkles to share keywords across your board feels so good. And that's just the beginning. Victor's evil laugh every time you play a created card. Vhagar's evil laugh when you increase the power of the darkness. The deep sound effect when you reach 15 cards. Aurelion Sol's entire level up. Doubling shrooms with Teemo. Pyke's board clear. And the list goes on. But then you realize to get that dopamine rush with Hecarim, you need to attack first. Stuns or freezes and all your efforts are denied instantly. There is the backup plan of Harrowing, and it is a very good card with ephemeral Hecarim decks, but it's an all or nothing play most of the time. I feel like a broken record at this point, but playing an expensive unit and having to take another action to start your attack just to get value is just too easy to counter. High mana cost, effective only on attack turns, terrible against stuns, the downside of ephemeral decks, no unit protection provided by the home region, and the fact that you summon the ephemeral units to Hecarim's right. What is up with that? If Hecarim gets removed, they lose their attack buffs. Can we at least make the riders go to his left? Or just make the entire level up a Nexus buff like they did for Zoe, where ephemeral units permanently have +3 attack no matter where they are? I don't know. I make these videos to look at champions that don't get as much love as some other champions. Kalista might be playable, but the majority of these foundation champions really need some looking at. It's a good thing the roadmap promised us the devs are going to take a look at older champions. And hey, look at that! They made the best part of Ionia not actually part of Ionia. Welcome, Jin. You and I are gonna have a great time together. How lovely! But yeah, let's just hope that this roadmap means there is going to be some love for ephemeral decks. I still remember starting Legends of Runeterra and opening Hecarim and Shark Chariot in one of my first capsules and being super excited to play the archetype because it was something I've never seen another card game do. Even when I was a noob, and I kinda still am. I didn't play the deck for long because as fun as it was, losing your units after every attack was tiresome. When it works, it's glorious, but when it doesn't, it feels worse than getting your glorious evolution denied by Ionia. If Kalista just gets some good cards to go in a deck with her, and if Hecarim gets a few changes to his functionality, then who knows, maybe after Grand Plaza and Blade Dance, we'll see Ephemeral Decks and our spooky duo shine at the top of a competitive tier list once more. In the end, is it worth trying to play an Ephemeral deck right now? Well, no. Some concepts are going to perform to a decent level, but it will remain as an inconsistent archetype, and that aspect, inconsistency, is extremely undesirable in card games. I expect a lot of newer players to go through the same kind of process. Oh, a spooky deck that plays powerful unit that only lasts a turn? That's so cool! And then after a few games, they realize how frustrating it is to get beat down because your board is always empty. But as always, these are just my thoughts and analysis. Let me know what you think of Ephemeral decks. Do you love them? Do you hate them? Do you love getting free LP when you queue into them? In any case, I look forward to seeing your comments, and I'll see you in the next video.